Texas, by the way, two terms that I want you to hear right now. Number one is Texian. What is a Texian? It's not a Texan, it's a Texian. You know also? What is your name? Say it a little bit louder. And what is a Texian? Say that again. No, not born in Texas. That would be a Texan. You guys are probably born in Texas. You guys are Texan. What is a Texian? Close. It's somebody who came from the U.S. to fight for Texas that was not born in Texas. So the people call them Texians. If you were from Kentucky and you came here, you were a Texian. They also had two other names for you. You could be a Texican or you could be a Texonian. That's the way they call you. This guy's a Texian, right? That means he's not from Texas, but he is now in Texas. How do you say Texan in Spanish? Tejano. That guy's winning, by the way, everybody. Tejano. That's how you say Texan in Spanish. All the Hispanics that lived in Texas during the Revolution were called Tejanos. Are there any Hispanics in this room? People with your last names lived in San Antonio, fought for Texas. Texas is the only state that was born, that was built out of its own revolution. No other state had to fight for their independence. First battle, the Battle of Gonzales, was fought by the very first militia of Texas, the Gonzales Volunteers. Again, like Jason was saying, every little town had its own volunteers, guys who would stand up like a little militia against the Native Americans or against anybody else who was coming to mess with them. Texas had no army during the Revolution. When the Revolution started, on this date, they had no army. So how did we fight the Mexican army? Well, a lot of people got together in their hometowns, built a little militia, and then they marched to Texas to join the revolution. Why would they sign up? What is your name? Pardon? Bryson. Bryson, let's say you're living in a community and they're saying, hey, let's go fight in Texas. And he goes, nah, I don't think so. Then they go, we'll give you 640 acres if you sign up for 6 months. All of a sudden it becomes an incentive, right? You're like, okay, yeah. But then here comes the other side of that coin. After you say, okay, I want to fight for Texas, I want the 640 acres, I'm coming from Kentucky, I'm going to go fight for Texas. And then Santa Anna announces to the world, if you come here from the States to fight for Texas, we're not going to be very lenient. If you surrender, you're not going to survive. We will kill everybody. So think about that before you come to Texas. And they still came. They still say, we're still going. They wanted to fight for Texas. This was the first battle, the first militia. All these militias are going to get together to form an army to fight against the Mexicans. The first militia was made up of 18 guys. They stood on the Guadalupe River. Across the river was the Mexican army. And they came there to pick up a cannon that they had lent them. And the people from Gonzales said, I don't think so. You're going to have to come and take it. By that, I mean you have to fight for it. Mexicans say, yeah, I don't think we want to do it. The reason the Mexicans didn't want to do it is not because they were cowards. Their boss had told them, go get the cannon, but don't kill anybody doing it. Don't kill people just to get the cannon. So when they saw that the Texans wanted to fight, they said, you know what? We're out of here. Keep the cannon. We're not going to kill anybody. These are the flags of the different militias that came by. The Goliath flag, one on the far left that has a severed arm. The New Orleans Grays flag, the one on the left. Guys from New Orleans, one of the biggest militias from the Texas Revolution came from New Orleans. The next one was from Lynchburg. It's called the Scots Liberal flag. Lynchburg is in East Texas. The next one is Sarah Dotson's flag. Harrisburg, which is now Houston. That was the Houston flag. Then we got the Coahuila y Texas flag. The next one, Liberty or Death, was from the Georgia Battalion, a huge battalion from Macon, Georgia, marched to Texas to fight for Texas. That was their banner. Then we have the 1824 flag that was also part of the Siege of Bear campaign, and we also have the last blue one with the Texas star is called the Days of Olive flag because the first interim vice president of Texas designed that flag. It didn't become like a battle flag, but it's still part of our heritage. And those were some of the representatives. Here's some more militias that came down. Look at the names: Alabama, New York, Mississippi, New Orleans. These are states in the Union who were putting together teams of people to come down here to Texas and help out Texas fight for its independence. Many militias. So when they would show up, Sam Houston or Stephen F. Foster would say, okay, how many here? We're the Paducah Volunteers. Great. We're from Kentucky. How many? 12. All right, you guys go hang out with this team and make a battalion. So they would conscript the people as they came in and made them part of the army. It was all militias. This is what the New Orleans Grace militia looked like. If you were part of their team, this is the uniform you would wear. They're from New Orleans. That was their banner, and they were called the Grays. If you ever see a movie and they talk about the Grays, this was them. Big part of Texas history. They were at the Alamo, and they were fighting in other places in Texas. This was their banner. And their banner, their flag, is the only one we know for sure that was at the Alamo. How do we know that? We weren't there, they didn't have any pictures, they didn't take any movies. How do we know that this flag was at the Alamo? Do you know? A little louder? Close enough. I'm going to show you the next picture. It's in a museum in Mexico City. The Mexicans captured it at the Alamo and took it back home. And the Texans want it back. When we were celebrating 150 years of Texas history in 1986, called the Sesquicentennial, a senator from Texas went to Mexico City to get that flag. You know what the Mexicans told him? You ain't getting it back. Every night, armed guards at that museum take that flag and hide it because they know Texans are crazy enough to sneak in at night, probably steal it and bring it back to Texas. Another militia, the Alabama Red Rovers. They wore red in their uniform and their flag was a red flag. The Georgia Battalion of Permanent Volunteers were from Georgia. This was the most prominent, biggest militia, most well-equipped militia of the Texas Revolution. They were from Georgia. That was their flag. This is their flag. You'll see it later, Liberty or Death flag. A girl made that for them, a young girl by the name of Joanna Troutman. And because of that, this flag is called the Troutman flag. Another team, the Kentucky Rifles. That guy right there is General Sherman. Actually, he was Colonel Sherman then. He fought at the Battle of San Jacinto with his guys. Look, they all look the same. Every time a militia showed up, they had to look the same. That was their flag. Where do you think that flag is today? State Capitol. Right behind the Speaker of the House. Look at the flag right there. Still there today. If you're ever lucky enough to go to the State Capitol and visit it in Austin, and you look at that flag, that was the flag from San Jacinto from the Kentucky Rifles. Guess who else was at the Alamo and fighting for Texas? Guys from England. Guys from Scotland. Guys from Ireland. At the Alamo at that time, you could hear all types of accents, from Spanish to English to people from the U.S., people from Europe. There was Germans. There was a huge diversity of people that volunteered to fight for Texas. By the way, one of the Scots, John McGregor, was 25 years old. He was a Scottish piper at the Alamo. Did you all even know that we had a Scottish piper at the Alamo? A guy with a bagpipe at the Alamo. John McGregor. He was a descendant of a famous clan of famous Scottish pipers from Scotland. Then, the most successful militia of the Texas Revolution. the Tejano Volunteer Company. These guys were from San Antonio, young men who signed up to fight for Texas. The name of their company, the name of their militia became known as the Tejano Volunteer Company. In Spanish, La Compañía de Tejanos Voluntarios, the Tejano Volunteer Company. That's what I wrote a book about these guys because I had never heard of that. Have any of you heard that the most successful militia of the Texas Revolution were Hispanic guys from San Antonio? Never. We hear about Davy Crockett, we hear about Jim Bowie, we hear about Stephen F. Austin, Sam Houston, a lot of people. But do we ever hear, well, who was like the MVP of the Texas Revolution? Don't you think that'd be something cool to know? Somebody said, hey, who was the MVP of Texas Revolution? You would say, those guys. And I'll tell you why. The most successful militia of the Texas Revolution. It's what they look like. Spanish descendants, Canary Islander descendants, people that dress like that, people who spoke in Spanish, people who were called Tejanos, people who lived in Texas, people who loved Texas. And this is what San Antonio looked like in 1835 during the Battle of the Alamo. Up there, you will see the Alamo. You see the river? That's the Riverwalk today. If you ever go to the Riverwalk, you're standing in a very historic part of Texas. This was the first city in Texas, founded in 1718. The people that founded that city, their kids, the grandkids, are the ones that fought in Texas Revolution. On September the 28th, 1835, things were going crazy all over Texas. Somebody said, what was the number one reason Texas fought? There was 12 reasons why Texas was in a revolution. When all of them came together, something was going to happen. So the young men of San Antonio, the Hispanics, got around and said, dude, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Are we going to fight with Santa Anna? Or are we going to fight with the Anglos from America? Jim Bowie, Travis, Croc, all these guys. What side are we going to choose? They chose to fight with the Americans because the Americans were fighting for freedom. They wanted Texas to be free. So on September the 28th, they had a meeting in Floresville. They got together and said, okay, let's decide. They decided, they signed papers to fight for 6 months, and they chose a leader. Who was their leader that they chose, by the way? Who is this guy? That's Juan Sigin. There's a city close to here called Seguin, named after this young man. He was 28 years old. He had 6 kids. He was married, and he became the captain of the most successful militia of the Texas Revolution. That's what he looked like. He was a bad boy. He knew how to make things happen. He made this quote one time at a meeting to inspire his men to fight. He goes, let me tell you something, guys. Texas shall be free and independent. Or what? We should die in combat. What he was saying to his guys is, look, there's no turning back. It's either fight or die. And that's what he became famous for, that quote right there. This is what he looked like. That's Juan Seguin. This is the leader of the Tejano Volunteer Company. That's his best friend. His bestie was a guy by the name of Salvador Flores. They grew up together, they learned how to ride horse together, they learned how to shoot together. Their families were united, so they knew each other. They were like cousins, even though they weren't cousins, but they were best friends. Chava Flores, if anybody can be called the MVP of the Texas Revolution, is this guy. Have you ever heard of him? Has anybody ever heard of this guy? Never. How do we not know that? We know Crockett, we know Bowie, we know a lot of guys. But the guy who fought the most hours, was at the most battles, whose family gave horses and supplies to the Texas cause and money, this guy. And he had 3 other brothers that fought in Texas Revolution. This guy is famous, Salvador Flores, by the way, is famous because he rescued Mary Millsap. Now, Jason was talking about Mary Millsap, a blind lady whose husband went to go fight at the Alamo and he got killed. She cried. She had 7 kids. The Texian army left Gonzalez and forgot about her. They left her behind. Then when Sam Houston found out about it later on, he called Juan Seguin. He goes, Juan, who can we send? We need somebody that knows the area, somebody who's a bad boy who can get there and get back with the family. They sent Salvador Flores, Juan Seguin's best friend. And he successfully found him and brought him back. Salvador Flores' brother, another famous Flores, is Manuel Flores, another MVP. Now, in the movie Texas Rising, they chose this actor, Gerardo Taracena, to play Manuel Flores, a Tejano hero of the Texas Revolution. That was the first time in 200 years that anybody even said his name in a movie. How can that be? 200 years. And we're not talking about the MVPs. That's like watching the Dallas Cowboys and we're not going to talk about Dak. You don't even know who he is. The same thing. This guy was like one of the MVPs, and he only comes out in the movie once in 200 years. His family was called the Fighting Flores. By the way, if you've ever heard of Floresville, Texas, that's these guys. It was named after these guys. That's their nicknames. Nepo, Chema. Chema means Jose Maria, Manuel, and Chava, which means Salvador. They fought in all those battles. They also became Texas Rangers. Everybody in Texas knew these guys. If you lived in those days, you knew who these guys were. You know why? Because if you ever bought a horse, there's a good chance they sold it to you. Because their family sold horses in Texas even 100 years before the Texas Revolution. Some of the horses that they sold for the American Revolution. But during the Texas Revolution, 4 brothers of that famous, prominent family fought, and they were called the Fighting Flores. Gregorio Esparza, this guy fell at the Alamo. He took his family to the Alamo, his wife Ana Esparza, and 4 kids. If you ever see the movie The Alamo, it's a little kid at the very end watching Davy Crockett fight at the very end. That little kid is this man's son, Enrique Esparza. Gregorio is one of the biggest heroes of the Alamo. He stood right next to James Bonham at the very end. They were like the last 2 or 3 guys before the Alamo fell. James Bonham from South Carolina could speak no Spanish. And Gregorio Esparza from San Antonio could speak no English. Yet, they fell together fighting for Texas. Manuel Leal, 24 years old, one of the founders of the Tejano Volunteer Company. 24 years old, one of the founders of the Tejano Volunteer. He fought in all the battles. Another Tejano hero. Oops. This guy also supplied a lot of money, supplies, and his own son fought in the Texas Revolution. This guy also fought in the Texas Revolution, Jose Miguel de Arciniega. You want to ever see the house that he built with his son in San Antonio, still there, close to the Riverwalk. If you Google Arciniega Street, that's where that little house is. He built a house that is still around today. Damasio Heenez. This was Travis's good friend. They came from Anahuac, they came to Alamo. When Travis got to the Alamo, he remembered they had a cannon back in Anahuac, and he said, go get that cannon, bring it here, because we're going to need it for the battle. Went and got it, and then he hoisted it up himself with a team of people. That cannon became the biggest cannon that we had at the Alamo, 18-pounder. That guy brought it and put it up. We have the Paul Revere of the Texas Revolution, Blas Herrera. Blas Herrera is a huge hero of the Texas Revolution. At one point, we needed to know if the Mexican army was coming back. Travis asked Seguin, which one of you guys is awesome enough to know how to go to the Rio Grande, look out for the army, and then come back telling us the intel that when they cross over. They sent this guy. He spent his 34th birthday in Laredo looking for the Mexican army. When he saw them, He got on his horse. The Mexican army saw him. They took a couple of shots at him, but they missed. He got on his horse and he rode 155 miles from Laredo all the way to San Antonio. At night, he was warning all the people as he was coming up, look out because the Mexican army is on their way. You need to get your family and get out of here. This guy, Blas Herrera. By the way, as soon as he gets there, he didn't have a chance to even eat breakfast before they said, okay, we have another mission for you. We want you to take these two guys to the convention of 1836 because they need to be at that convention because they need to sign the Texas Declaration of Independence. Those two guys are the only two Hispanics that signed the Texas Declaration of Independence because Blas took them, and Blas was the only sergeant standing at that door of that famous convention, guarding. Carlos Espalier, you will see his name on the cenotaph at the Alamo. The youngest Hispanic to die at the Alamo, part of the Tejano Volunteer Company. He was the adopted son of Bowie. Look at that. In those days, there was no such thing as homeless people. This kid lost both of his parents to cholera. Bowie's walking down the street one day and saw him sitting there and he goes, what's up? And he goes, dude, I got no home anymore. And Bowie said, follow me. And he became his adopted son. He takes him to the Alamo, taught him how to fight and everything, take him to the Alamo, and that is where he fell. Leandro Chavez, the transporter. He had a little cart, and he would transport all the injured people during the battles, back and forth. During the storming of the Veramendi Palace, he was a fighter. In the Veramendi Palace, they were fighting on the roof of that place. There was a lot of stuff going on. The Texans, the Tejanos had entered through the side. They were fighting, they were running out of ammo. And they were surrounded, and they needed somebody to cross the street, Soledad Street, go to the other side, tell those guys to give us some more bullets and meet us over here, because if not, we're going to get killed. They needed a volunteer. This guy decided to cross the street. You see him right there running. Because I could do it. In the middle of the street, as he's running and zigzagging, a sniper got him. Shot him in the head. Everybody was watching. They saw him fall in the dirt. They're like, we're going to need another runner. So as he was laying on the ground, they shot him again, shot him on the foot. As they're looking for another volunteer, somebody said, look over there. They turn around. This guy was hopping on one foot, squirting blood from his forehead. Got across, survived the war. You can see his injuries. Lorenzo de Zavala. You've heard of that street, de Zavala. This guy wrote our Texas Constitution. He became the first interim vice president of the state, but he also designed that flag right there. Another famous Tejano. The Recon Brothers. These guys were half Lipan Apaches and half Hispanic, but they knew the territory like nobody else. They became like the spies and of the Texan army. They knew where everything was. They could get you anywhere in the state, even in the dark. During the Battle of Concepcion, they hid up there in the tower of one of the Concepcion mission, and they told the Texans through hand signals what the forces looked like in front of them so they could be able to defend themselves. We won that battle. There was 400 Mexicans against 90 Tejanos and Texans. 4-1, because of their hand signals, we were able to defeat the Mexicans that day, that morning. Carlos Chacon, another famous Tejano, that's his descendant. Many years later, this guy is related to Carlos Chacon, one of the youngest guys from the Texas Revolution. We also had girls. These are the Navarro girls. What role did they play in the Alamo? They were Bowie's nurses. When Bowie got sick, guess who took care of him? These two girls. And if you see the movie, the latest one with Billy Bob Thornton, you will see one of the girls, Juana Navarro, played a major role, and you'll see her taking care of Bowie. Bowie also marries a girl from San Antonio. Did anybody even know that Jim Bowie got married? I didn't, but he marries Ursula de Veramendi. That place where they were fighting on the roof, that was her family home. It's called the Veramendi Palace. They were the richest people in San Antonio. Bowie married Ursula, the richest girl in San Antonio. Another famous big name in San Antonio was Curbelo. The Curbelo girl, Maria de Jesus Curbelo, married John Smith. John Smith was a redhead. We called him Colorado, which means redhead. He had red hair, he was white, he had blue eyes, and according to the stuff I read, he was a beautiful man, and the girls fell in love with him. Maria de Jesus Curbelo, one of the most eligible young ladies of San Antonio, married him. These are all the battles of the most successful militia. That militia, the Tejano Volunteer Company from San Antonio, made up of Hispanics from that day that were between the ages of 15 and 35, who formed the militia, who fought for Texas, fought in all those battles. The Battle of Gonzales, the Battle of Goliad, the Battle of Concepcion, the grass fight. I don't know if you guys know all these battles. The assault of San Antonio, the Battle of the Alamo. We lost 8 Tejanos at the Battle of the Alamo. Does anybody know even one name of the Tejanos that fell at the Alamo? One Tejano. Does anybody know any of them? There was 8 of them. Out of the 189 guys that perished that day, 8 of them were Hispanic. Do we know one of their names? Juan Badillo, Juan Ambamillo, Antonio Fuentes, Carlos Espalier, Andrés Nava, Toribio Lozoya, Damasio Heenez, and Gregorio Esparza. Someday, you should at least know one. And that's it, the Tejano Volunteer Company, the most successful militia of the Texas. If there was an MVP of all the militias, these guys would be it. 200 years later, nobody knows that. How do we not know the biggest, most successful militia of the Texas Revolution? And that's me. I'm just kidding. So thank you very much. Did anybody learn anything today? What did you learn? Bryson? Name one thing that just pops into your head. That's right. There was a lot of Hispanics that fought in the Texas Revolution. That is correct. I'm going to tell you something right now. This is going to sound a little bit odd, but if it wasn't for these guys, I don't think we would have won, to be honest with you. Not to say that the other guys didn't do a lot, but if you read about, and I wrote a book about it, if you read about the Tejanos, you're going to say, you know what, I don't think we would have won without these guys. It's important to know. Any other questions? What was the leader of the Tejano Volunteer Company? There you go. This is the flag of the New Orleans Grays. What was Juan Segin's best friend? What was his last name? Flores. How many brothers did he have? He had 3 brothers. With him, he was 4. Any other questions? What is the greatest state in the Union? There you go. What is the capital of Texas? Austin is correct. How many months did the Texas Revolution take place? That's okay. It was close enough. Here you go, Mijo. Anybody have any other guess? How long did the Texas Revolution last? 6 months. That's it. Oh, you said 6 months? There you go. We believe you. Anyway, thank you very much, guys. My next guest speaker is going to really put on a really great presentation. I love his presentation because he's going to talk about the weapons of the Texas Revolution, including all the weapons that they used, or some of the weapons they used during the fight for the Alamo. His name is Joe Witherspoon. Guys, thank you so much. Let's give him a hand.